music, tones, frequencies, vibrations, all these components make up the wonderful world that is sound therapy, and how we interact with sound affects the entire quality of our lives. Welcome to this first episode of the Passionate Spirit podcast. So when we talk about utilizing sound therapy in our daily lives, we're talking about our harmonization of all these aspects and allowing ourselves to be attuned to the perfect state to which we aspire, whether it be our psychological state, our emotional state, our physical being, or our spiritual connection. We will see through the next half an hour or so all the dimensions where sound and a conscious use of sound affect our well-being and ultimately our destiny, because this human incarnation that we're living is a precious gift. And whether we've had hundreds of lives previously or wherever we're going in the next one, the goal ultimately is to create the most harmonious, perfectly attuned version of ourselves in this life. And that's what this podcast is all about, actually, in all its different dimensions. And today we're going to explore sound therapy, also known as sound healing. As a composer, as songwriter, sound has captivated me as far back as I can remember. Whether it be poetry, the way two sounds or vowels work together, the way different instruments combine. Sound therapy is all these things applied in a conscious and a very intuitive way. I've devoted a large part of my life to creating sound therapy through my musical CDs. So it's a world, a wonderful world that we're going to explore today. And let's get into it. Historically, one of the very first groups to utilize sound healing were the Aboriginal Australians. And they utilized an instrument called the yidaki, which is a form of didgeridoo, which I've myself used on my album Mantra Spirit. And their belief was that the sounds from this instrument could aid in healing muscle or bone damage. The ancient Egyptians were also aware of sound healing, and their priests and ritual leaders used an instrument called a sistrum, which is a form of rattle, and they chanted vocal overtones and other vowels to create sound healing in their culture. In ancient Greece, the renowned philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras was also one of the first proponents of sound healing, and he used an instrument called a kithara, which is a type of lyre, a small stringed instrument, which is used as well by troubadours in the ancient world. And what he noticed was its calming and soothing effect on people, and also perhaps for the first time on animals. At the same time, he also discovered that the 7 keys in the Greek system of music could be used to trigger various emotions. And as we know later on, this number 7 will come back often with the chakras, with the notes of the scale, the C, D, E, F, G, A, B in our traditional scale. He also described this as perhaps the beginning of a form of musical medicine. So as we begin to unravel sound therapy and its power, we go right back to the origin, which is the intention. Now, this is something I've talked a lot about with my own music, is the purity of intention. And what this means is what what exactly is behind our goal? Is it to entertain? Is it to relax? Is it to stimulate? Is it to create a connection? Is it to simply share something that is resonating within us? Regardless, the intention when we're talking about sound therapy becomes paramount to how the person receiving the healing session will interpret it. So for example, if I'm in a state of complete connection and inner peace and calm, and my intention is simply to transmit healing frequencies, well, of course, there's a certain harmony created, an equilibrium in this process. And conversely, if I'm in a state of agitation or perhaps with stored up emotions or negativity, this as well can be transmitted. So it creates with the sound practitioner a great responsibility to keep his energy clear and pure. We could say that all forms of music have therapeutic capabilities. I've looked at a lot at this throughout my career as a composer and as a songwriter. And people, of course, will gravitate towards what feels comfortable to them. And this is a subject unto itself that we could perhaps explore another time. But simply said, in the case of sound therapy or sound healing, what feels good and what is resonating with our etheric body will obviously have a greater impact. So we could say that the individual's needs become paramount when we're in this role as a sound healing practitioner. The time, the place, the temperature of the room. Last night I did a session with a client and immediately she said, well, can I have a blanket? And even with one blanket, she required another one, because to be in a comfortable state when we're receiving this type of treatment is incredibly important, that we feel at ease to allow ourselves to receive. And this is another important point, because as much as the practitioner offers a transmission of sound through the various instruments, including his own voice, the state of receptivity of the client is paramount. If she or he is in a state of agitation, or the mental body is simply unable to process or allow things to enter, well, then you have this same dichotomy. So what you're looking for is a fluid transmission between the practitioner and the recipient, so that the sound waves and energy can flow harmoniously back and forth. And as well, the sound practitioner being intuitive to their needs. Is it too loud? Is it not enveloping enough? The frequency where we're working at in terms of the chakras, all these variables come into play and determine essentially the quality of the sound session. At this point, it might be interesting to take a look at how sound vibrations and how sound energy actually enters our body. And the primary way, of course, is through our ears. And I've written down a more technical explanation that we can perhaps explore. So let me have a look at this. So we begin by the outer ear actually funnels the sound. And the ear canal then channels it to the eardrum, okay? And the sound waves cause the eardrums to vibrate. And there's apparently 3 tiny bones called ossicles that trigger a shift in the cochlea, which is the liquid-filled coiled tubes that are filled with tiny hairs. This is really technical. This is why I wrote it down. And what happens is when these hairs move, well, they send nerve signals to the brain, and the brain understands this as being sound. It's quite fascinating. Another way sound enters the body apparently is through our skin and our sensitivity. So you only have to touch yourself to feel, the vibration of your own movement, and consequently to realize how we can be affected by sound around us. For example, when we're close to a crystal bowl, which I have some behind me, you feel the vibration and it enters through your hand. So you're hearing it, but you're also feeling it. And this impact will ultimately transcend the physical body. Personally, I like to explore and discover things myself, to understand how they work and how they impact my own personal energy. But clearly, with sound therapy, studies have been done showing how sonotherapy reduces anxiety, reduces stress, the psychological and physiological ramifications. And research has also shown how sound therapy can govern overall health, our well-being, our state of mind, our level of stress. All these things are impacted. And it's the same case for music. Much of the music I've created throughout my career as a composer, especially the more meditative musics, have been used as a form of sound therapy for almost 30 years now, by Reiki practitioners, by meditation practitioners, for massage, for other types of energetic treatment. So sound is powerful, and we can't underestimate either the impacts of sound interference. So what types of sound are we bathing in daily? Are we exposed to city noises that become so normal because we hear them all the time that we don't hear them anymore? Are we exposed to someone who has a television playing nonstop, or a radio? All of this is sound pollution. And the way that we expose ourselves to sound dictate exactly how we feel, how we react. If we're more patient, all these things are factors. So sound is a major proponent of our general well-being. Sound therapy goes as far as affecting our blood pressure, our heart rate, our respiration, our body temperature. It has a major impact on our total physical and mental being, and in turn, how we conduct ourselves on a daily level. Are we in tune with our environment? Are we in tune with what we are feeling ourselves? All of this comes back to sound. So in a sound therapy session, for example, when a client comes to see me for a session, first of all, I'll do a brief consultation with the client, maybe around 30 minutes, to evaluate what's going on, what's the mental body living, what type of anxieties are we living, what do we want to work on. And then I will intuitively, through all these various different instruments that I have, use them to transmit this sound to the client through, as I've mentioned already, first of all, my intention. And as the sound vibrations through the energy of movement make their way to the client, that they work in the appropriate places, in the energy centers that I've chosen. You may have heard that everything in the universe is a vibration, and consequently, our bodies as well emit vibrational frequencies. For example, a vibration from my hand, a vibration from my arm, the different energy centers. All of these are constantly emitting, like they're like transmitters of frequency. So this, in interaction with the sound, creates the entire process whereby vibrational healing becomes possible. It's fascinating, actually, when you think about it, because with everything being vibration and us being ourselves vibratory beings, we are coexisting at all times with our environment, with other vibrational frequencies, and it helps explain how relationships work, how friendships work. The relationship with animals is that everything is all about vibration. So sound healing and sound therapy is transmitting the appropriate signal to the part of the body that requires recalibrating or rebalancing. It's really a very basic way to explain it. And consequently, if we look now at illness and how the body reacts, we can see that an organ or a part of the body that is blocked, it is not reacting or interacting with its whole in its normal, healthy state. And so this is where the sound therapy becomes very interesting, is that we're able, through this process, to essentially recalibrate that energy center or that organ and allow it to begin the process of healing. And I want to mention, it's very important, this is not to replace traditional medicine. Now, this has been used for thousands of years. Clearly, not everyone is aware of it, but to experience a sound healing session with all these instruments and all this purity of intention is truly a wonderful experience. So how exactly does sound therapy affect the body? A good place to start would be to understand what sound is. Perhaps we could describe it as the energy that's created when an object vibrates. And subsequently, that vibration causes the air around the object to vibrate. Perhaps you're picking up right now the fact that as much as we're talking about sound therapy in today's episode, we're actually talking about how our vibrations interact with other vibrations, other people, and ultimately how they interact with the universe. And it's something really to be responsible of and to realize how our vibrations affect other people. And so you see, as we lift our consciousness collectively and especially individually, we become aware of these things. And at the base of all of it is sound. Let's put this into application with one of my handheld crystal balls. The first sensation I had was one of alignment. It was like completely in tune throughout my body. Obviously, I felt the oscillation as I moved the ball around my head. I could feel the air. It's quite magical, especially even when we do it for ourselves. And it's a centering. This particular ball creates this clarity. It's like an all-knowing, wonderful experience. Perhaps you can feel it even through the camera. There's a wonderful expression that states, attention goes where energy flows. This is perfectly applicable because this is what's going on with sound therapy. As the practitioner focuses, for example, on the left knee and transmits a frequency through an instrument, and this will flow towards the client's knee. We could perhaps visualize it as a fluid gold light coming through my crown chakra and simply circulating through my fingers, into my hands, down into my arms, and into my physical body, through my heart, into my plexus, and into my legs. This would be a way of seeing the sound as it works. Now, for people who are skeptical of this, try it, experiment it. It's quite fascinating, and it will open as well your awareness to how energetic bodies and everything actually works. We hear these things, we hear them, but to see them and to experience them is always another level. So I encourage you at that level to discover it. One of the reasons our bodies resonate so well with sound energy is that they're composed primarily of water. And with water being a denser molecule, it allows the sound to travel more quickly from one particle to the other. So again, so much wonderful information to show this relationship that we have with the beauty of sound. Let's take a moment now as I share with you different instruments in my vibratory room, their sounds, their frequencies, and their tones, and invite you to focus on them and see how they interact with your emotional, your spiritual, and your physical bodies. Starting with the Tibetan bowls made of 7 precious metals. These are hand-hammered according to timeless Tibetan traditions and tuned to a 5th harmonic. That means that they will resonate perfectly together as a pair. I can either turn them or strike them with different mallets depending on the intensity and the intention. My crystal singing bowls are all perfect pitch, which means they're within -5 and +5 cents in terms of their sonic measurement. That allows me to create perfectly tuned performances or sessions. Very important to me as a musical artist. Crystal, obviously, these bowls are 99% quartz silicon, and our bodies being each geometric crystalline structures, well, they resonate perfectly. At a molecular level, our own bodies contain silica, which balances the electromagnetic energies, and the crystal acts as an oscillator to amplify and magnify the pure tones. I also have a beautiful collection of gongs. The word gong is actually Indonesian. Gongs originated in Tibet back in the Bronze Age. Having a gong in one's own personal space is truly a pleasure, and they create an incredibly powerful and penetrating experience, which helps to bring back the life force and eliminate stored up or residual energies. Complex overtones of the gongs help train our brainwaves from a beta, which is a normal consciousness state, into a theta or a delta state. And they're also beautiful to look at, as you can see. Music, tones, frequencies, and vibrations. I hope you've enjoyed the first episode of the Passionate Spirit podcast. It's been a pure joy to share these moments with you. And next week, I have the distinctive honor of receiving best-selling author Lise Bourbeau. See you soon.